They say betrayal creeps in quietly, but mine walked in wearing tailored suits, smiling like an ally, and calling me partner. My name is Sloane Mercer, and for 8 years I was the Chief Financial Officer of Halcyon Verge Group, a company that sold the world a lie about ethics and innovation. I didn't grow up with safety nets or second chances. Numbers were my refuge, precision my armor, and I built my reputation by catching the mistakes other people missed. What I didn't know was that while I was protecting the company was preparing to feed on me. The signs were small at first. An unsigned invoice tucked into a Monday stack. A purchase order I didn't remember approving. Corrections showing up in the ledger under my login after midnight. I chalked it up to system glitches, fatigue, maybe even misprints. Until the night everything aligned. It was 1:17 a.m., the office lights motion-triggered and dim. I was alone in the finance wing, finalizing quarterly reports ahead of the board review. My water glass was empty, so I left my laptop locked and headed to the break room. I was gone 6 minutes. When I returned, my screen was on. My password was still required, but the invoice folder was open, and a document titled Helix Biomedical Allocations Internal Clearance sat like a confession on the desktop. My username S. Mercer was stamped at the bottom next to scrawled approval notes I never wrote. I froze. Then I took a screenshot. When I opened the company log, the access trail said the file had been modified under my credentials 10 minutes earlier while I was in the hallway. But the timestamp location tag? CEO Suite Network. Reese Lockwood. Our chief executive. The face of every charity gala and magazine spread. The man who gave me my big break and called me the cornerstone of our integrity department. The first person I trusted here. I checked the revision history to previous versions, both routed through a shell vendor I'd never seen. The dollar amounts weren't small. 7 figures, quietly redirected to a subsidiary that didn't exist last quarter. And the approval authority listed? Mine. It didn't feel like panic, not yet. It felt like a fuse catching fire somewhere in the walls. I backed up the document to a secure external drive, then deleted my local traces. It wasn't until I stood to leave that I saw him, Julian Crest, leaning in the glass corridor like he'd been waiting. He was head of strategy, sometimes called heir apparent, and the man I had once imagined marrying before ambition taught us both sharper lessons. "You're here late," he said, too softly. "So are you," I answered. He glanced at my laptop bag. "Working on approvals." The kind of question you ask when you already know the answer or think you orchestrated it. I walked past him without replying. He didn't stop me, but he watched the elevator close with a calmness that felt like foreknowledge. That was the night I stopped assuming I was imagining things. The night I stopped giving them the benefit of the doubt. The night I understood that I wasn't being framed by accident, I was being positioned. And positioning has only one endgame: sacrifice. The next morning, Halcyon Verge buzzed with the hum of a new fiscal quarter, executives in navy suits, assistants juggling lattes and printouts, an air of barely contained triumph. To everyone else, it was business as usual. To me, it was a stage set for a crime scene. I arrived early, walked the hallways with a neutral face, and smiled at Reese Lockwood in the glass elevator as if nothing burned beneath my skin. His reflection in the chrome doors was flawless. Silver hair, perfect tie, a leader who donated a wing to a children's hospital last year. People clapped when he walked into rooms. But all I could see was my signature under his shell companies. Julian Crest was waiting by my office. His tie was undone, his eyes hooded but bright. "Board wants your preliminary budget notes by noon," he said. "They're rushing an acquisition vote." "Which acquisition?" I asked. "Helix Biomedical," he said, almost smirking. "The one you cleared last quarter." It was bait. I could feel it. But I took the papers without blinking. "Send me the updated ledger," I said. "I'll review it before lunch." When he left, I closed the door, locked it, and opened my encrypted drive. Screenshots. Logs. Transfer routes. I was building a map of their deception. Millions siphoned, my name rubber-stamped on each page. If the SEC came knocking, I'd be the one in handcuffs. I needed proof stronger than screenshots. I needed context, conversation, a trail they couldn't erase. So I called the one person still inside their circle who might help me without realizing it. Naomi Briggs, Reese's executive assistant. Naomi thought she owed me because I'd once covered for her mistake on a payroll report. She also liked to gossip when nervous. "Hey Naomi," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Quick question, did Reese travel last week? I'm trying to reconcile some expenses." A pause, then a whisper. "He was at the Westport retreat. With Julian. They had boxes of files flown in." "Why?" "Just checking," I said. "Thanks." She hesitated. "Be careful, Sloane." I hung up before she could say more. At lunch, Reese held a meeting with senior staff in the conference room. I watched through the glass as he gestured, charismatic as ever. Julian sat to his right, his pen tapping a silent metronome. When Reese caught my eye, he smiled like a father watching a favorite child. I smiled back, because predators relax when prey stops running. After the meeting, Reese stopped by my office. "Sloane, you're quiet today," he said. "Everything okay?" "Just numbers," I replied. He chuckled. "Numbers are your poetry. Don't let them drown you." As soon as he left, I slipped the keycard Naomi had couriered under my door into my pocket. It opened the 18th floor archive, the one marked compliance restricted. That night, long after everyone left, I swiped into the archive. Rows of locked cabinets, dim lighting, and the faint smell of paper and ozone. I found the Helix biomedical file too easily. Inside, pristine contracts, clean ledgers, nothing incriminating. A decoy. But behind the binder, taped to the metal wall, was a flash drive. Unlabeled. I pocketed it, heart hammering. As I turned to leave, the overhead lights flickered and a voice said from the doorway, "You're not supposed to be here." Julian Crest. He didn't look angry. He looked amused. "Working late again?" I forced a shrug. "Reconciling." He stepped closer. "You should be careful, Sloane. Some numbers aren't meant to be balanced." I brushed past him without answering. In the elevator mirror, our reflections overlapped like ghosts. He was still smiling. I drove home without turning on the radio, the flash drive burning a phantom weight in my coat pocket. My apartment overlooked the river, sleek, silent, and purchased with 10 years of clean work. I locked the door, powered up an offline laptop, and opened the drive. It wasn't one file. It was dozens. Invoices routed through subsidiaries I'd never heard of. Emails forwarded from burner accounts. Approval forms stamped with my credentials, but the timestamps didn't match my logins, and the locations traced back to Reese Lockwood's executive network. They'd been building this for months. Maybe longer. One folder stood out, Crest_legal hold. When I opened it, I saw something that made me go still, internal chat screenshots. Conversations between Julian and the COO, implying that if federal regulators audited Helix Biomedical, they'd hand it to Sloane on a platter and shut the door. They didn't just want a scapegoat. They wanted a clean corpse. The next morning, I met Lydia Ashford in the lobby cafe under the guise of a routine contract check. She was Halcyon's chief legal officer. Brilliant, measured, and allergic to scandal she didn't control. I slid into the booth and said quietly, "Hypothetically, if a senior officer was being set up for embezzlement, how long would the cover-up hold?" She didn't look at me at first. She stirred her coffee. "Depends who's building it. Someone with money, access, and confidence they won't get caught." She finally met my eyes. "Why are you asking me this?" I found forged approvals tied to my login. Shell accounts. Redirected funds. And someone left me a drive full of evidence they thought I wouldn't find. Her voice lowered. "Reese." "And Julian," I said. She exhaled once, not surprise, but resignation. "I've suspected unusual movement in the ledgers for 6 months. But I didn't have enough to confront them. If what you're saying is real, they're not just exploiting loopholes. They're preparing a fall girl." "Me?" She nodded once. "They chose you because you're competent, quiet, and high-ranking enough to take the hit without sinking the board. If the SEC comes, they'll call it rogue behavior." not systemic fraud. I slid the flash drive across the table. You'll find enough to burn them. She didn't touch it. I'll verify one piece at a time. But be careful. If they suspect you know, they won't wait for paperwork. I left first. She didn't say goodbye. That evening, I stayed at the office later than usual, not to work, but to watch. Reese left at 7:40, briefcase in hand, smiling like he hadn't stolen $1 in his life. Julian stayed until nearly 9, then disappeared into the parking garage like a shadow in an expensive coat. At 9:15, security cameras on the 18th floor glitched for exactly 6 minutes. At 9:19, a maintenance request closed without ever being opened. Someone was scrubbing something. I took the east stairwell, no cameras, and reached the archive hallway. From the corner, I saw a light on under the door. Voices. I recognized one instantly. Julian. She's smarter than we thought, he was saying. She's sniffing around logs. Another voice, the COO. As long as the signatures stick, she can't get out from under it. Julian laughed softly. By the time she realizes we already prepped the narrative, it'll be too late. Reese will announce internal misconduct, the board will demand a resignation, and I'll regretfully take interim oversight. It writes itself. And if she fights? That's what the audit memo is for. We leak it first, then clean the last traces. She'll be too busy denying before she figures out where to dig. The COO asked, and the girl? The receptionist. Camille. Julian's voice cooled. Handled. She'll keep her mouth shut. She knows what happens if she doesn't. Something in me throbbed and stilled at once. Camille Locke. She'd vanished last year without warning. Rumor said she'd been bought out. Now I knew better. My hands curled around the stair rail. I felt the shape of the decision before it fully formed. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about war. War doesn't start with weapons. It starts with witnesses. The night after I heard Julian and the COO plotting my professional execution, I stopped reacting and started recruiting. The first person I met wasn't a friend. She was a survivor. Camille Locke. I tracked her down through an outdated payroll file and found her working at a non-profit legal clinic 2 cities over. When she opened the door and saw me, she froze. I'm not going back there, she said. I'm not here to drag you in, I replied. I'm here to ask how they got you out. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she stepped aside and let me in. The apartment was small, quiet, and stripped of anything that connected her to her old life. She poured tea but didn't drink. Julian forged my electronic approvals. Then Reese called me into his office and said if I didn't resign quietly, he'd accuse me of fraud and report me himself. I was 26. I thought I'd go to prison. Did they pay you off? She nodded. A settlement. With an NDA so tight I still have nightmares about speaking out loud. Do you have proof? I asked. Camille looked me in the eyes for the first time. I kept copies of everything. I knew I was someone's test run. I didn't smile, but I felt the ground shift. I'm not asking you to go public. I'm asking you to help me bury them. She slid a small lockbox from under the couch. Then you'll need this. Inside, emails, ledger screenshots, a voice memo of a meeting where Julian told her to sign and shut up, and a maintenance ticket showing security camera downtime the night her credentials were cloned. She watched my face. They'll destroy you before they let you speak. They've already tried, I said. I'm tired of whispering. Next, I met with Margot Pierce, head of information security. If anyone had seen the digital footprints, it was her. She was cautious, sharp, and allergic to corporate theater. We met in her car, in the underground garage. Margot, how long have you known? I asked. She didn't pretend. 6 months. I flagged anomalies through Reese's network. Lydia told me to keep monitoring quietly, not question anything. So why didn't you report it? She gave me a look that could cut glass. Because if I filed a breach report, they'd fire me, erase the logs, and frame you faster. I showed her the flash drive. Her eyes sharpened. If we combine this with my access logs, we can prove system forgery and deliberate impersonation. And Camille's records, I added. Margot's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Then we don't go to compliance. We go above them. Straight to the audit committee. And Lydia? Margot exhaled. She's not clean. But she's not on their side either. She's waiting for someone else to pull the trigger. I left with a clean export of Margot's logs and a plan forming at the base of my spine. The next day, I tested someone I'd once trusted. Julian Crest. I walked into his office unannounced. "You left something in the archive room," I said. He didn't blink. "Did I? You should be more careful where you use my credentials." His smile came slow. "If you're accusing me of something, Sloane, now would be the time." "I'm not accusing," I said. "I'm observing." Julian stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "Then observe this: if you walk into the board with half-truths, the fallout will be nuclear. For you. Then I'll bring the whole truth." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Be smart. Or be silent." I held his gaze. "You should have killed the evidence when you forged it." His expression flickered, just for a second, the first crack in the mask. As I turned to leave, he said, "Reese thinks you'll fold." I didn't look back. His betting on the wrong accountant. That night, Camille sent me a message: "I'm in. Whatever it costs." And the war stopped being theoretical. It became scheduled. I didn't wait for the perfect moment. I built it. The first step was forcing transparency without giving them time to bury me. I met Lydia Ashford, our chief legal officer, after hours in her office. She didn't offer tea. She didn't smile. She just said, "Show me." I handed her the flash drive, Camille's documents, and the access logs from Margot. She plugged in the drive and started opening files without a word. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. When she finally spoke, her tone had changed. "How long have you known?" "Since the Helix file appeared under my login." "And you're certain Camille will testify if needed?" "She's ready." Lydia closed the laptop. "You understand what this becomes once I move." "If you delay," I said, "they'll get ahead of it. Or they'll erase me entirely." She nodded once. "Then we don't take it to Reese. We take it to the audit committee." "And the board?" "They won't get a chance to spin this first. You'll speak before they do." That was the turning point. The next morning, Lydia called an emergency closed session audit committee meeting. I walked in with a neat folder and the calm expression of someone who's already been convicted in absentia. Around the table sat 6 people who believed they already knew the story. They expected budget numbers, not blood. Lydia introduced the matter as a potential financial integrity review requiring immediate confidentiality. Then she looked at me. I began with the Helix biomedical invoices, the ones bearing my forged digital signature. I showed them the transfer trail from the shell vents. I showed them the access logs proving my login was spoofed from Reese Lockwood's executive network. I played the audio Camille recorded of Julian threatening to hand me over if anyone traced the funds. I handed over Camille's NDA, signed under duress, and her whistleblower statement. I gave them the keycard logs, the maintenance logs, the Slack exports, the camera outage timestamps Margot had preserved off-grid. Every piece was dated, verified, cross-matched. They didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, Lydia presented her own findings: legal risk assessments, federal reporting requirements, mandatory compliance breaches, and the unavoidable steps of disclosure. There was no shouting. That was the most satisfying part. By the end of the session, 3 unanimous decisions had been made. 1. Reese Lockwood was placed on immediate leave pending investigation. 2. Julian Crest was suspended and referred to outside counsel. 3. A forensic audit and federal referral were initiated within 24 hours. 2 board members resigned the next day. Camille's NDA was legally voided. Margot was moved into direct oversight of the audit, not under the CEO's office. Lydia assumed interim executive authority over disclosures. And me. They offered me the full CFO seat permanently. Control. Title. Authority. I turned it down. I'm not here to inherit their empire, I said. I'm here to make sure no one else gets erased inside it. I stayed as a transitional advisor through the investigation, then walked away before the headlines finished printing. Lockwood and Crest were eventually charged, wire fraud, falsification, coercion, misuse of restricted systems. Investors panicked, but the company didn't collapse. It adapted. Sometimes survival looks like surrender until you see who's still standing afterward. 6 months later, I started something new, a financial integrity and whistleblower consultancy for high-risk organizations. Margot joined as a cybersecurity lead. Lydia refers clients to me when internal rot gets too deep. Camille volunteers at the legal arm we fund quietly, helping people like her climb out before they're buried. People ask if I feel vindicated. They don't understand. Vindication is too small a word. I didn't clear my name. I rewrote the ending. And the men who tried to turn me into a footnote now live in the shadow of a story they never thought I'd tell.